are going to be talking about foreshadowing. Dun dun dun. So something that hopefully will connect this for you is horror movies and foreshadowing. So these two things have a lot in common. So when you see this image or this image, it's like you can almost hear them. You can hear the iconic dun 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 dun, like the Jaws sort of theme song. You can hear Jason Voorhees, like the music that is associated, and you know that when you see these things that they're about to strike. So soundtracks. So you know immediately that if you're watching Jaws and you hear that movie, you know the shark is near. That is the movie's director, producer, whoever, telling you that something is about to happen. So foreshadowing in literature works in a lot of the same ways. It's just a little bit more subtle. And if you've never seen Jaws, you can click that link at the bottom and it'll take you and let you hear that music. It's kind of haunting. So foreshadowing, so here's the definition. So foreshadowing is a warning or indication of a future event. So if a character says, let's split up in a horror movie, then you probably know that someone is likely to die. Foreshadowing is also sort of like you have a character who maybe can see the future. So if they say something, then they're foretelling what's going to happen. Okay, so this is a principle, and it's called Chekhovs Gun, and it is something that definitely takes a play into foreshadowing and how we read short stories, and it is a principle that states that every element in a story must be necessary and irrelevant elements should be removed. Elements should not appear to make false promises by never coming into play. So the meat of this is, if you're watching a play and there is a gun on the wall, it can't be there for no reason. By the end of the play, it has to be fired. It has to be used. Authors do this in a very specific way. So if they mention a character, or if they mention a character, I think we're going to go into that slide. Everything is important. Everything is important. So if a writer, the sneaky sneaks that they are, if they mention a character at the beginning of a novel or give information about how something works, whether it is their government or a machine, or they say, oh, that's dangerous, and what they'll do is they won't mention it again for the next 300 pages. But what they have just done is they've laid a clue for you to find. And you can bet that they are going to come back to that element before the end of the story. 100%. Because authors, remember, they do not do anything just willy-nilly. Like, it's for a purpose and for a reason. So if you see something like that, it's not just the writer saying, okay, just let me include this detail for no reason. Everything is important. So what you should look out for, these are just a few things, but just the ones off the top of my head. So if a character mentions any of these things, pay attention. Number one, the way that something should be. If they're talking about, especially in dystopia, so like the Hunger Games. So Katniss is like, I wish, the Capitol was different, that Pan Am was run a certain way, that things would be affected differently. Then you can just might as well guarantee that she was going to do something about that system was going to change. That leads you to think about what could possibly be the conflict. And that's even as simple as being like a character saying, I wish I had a better relationship with my parents. By the end of the story, they will either A, have a better relationship with their parents, or B, have a worse relationship. You know that something is going to happen. Number two, a character who isn't introduced immediately, but who the writer brought up regardless. So if you have a character and they're like, I really, really miss my best friend, Alice, or gosh, that new kid that we had last year, but who never came back to school, like, he was really interesting. Okay, remember that your writer is saying that everything is important. So they're mentioning this character because they're going to be brought back by the end of the series mostly 100%. So if a character is talking about another character that you don't immediately get to see or get to know, that character is important and they're going to come back into play. Number 3, if a character like reminisces about a memory that doesn't seem to relate to the story at all, that is always important. Anytime a writer takes time out to describe a memory about something, that's important because the writer is trying to get you to connect with the character and to think about what other details in this character's life that you should find important. So they're doing that for a reason. And then the last one, anytime an object of great importance is mentioned. So this means like if you're reading like fantasy, and it could just be like a sly mention, like, oh, the sword of great power or whatever. This is the thing that could save the kingdom. You might not actually go on a quest to get this sword several books later, but that will be the one that saves everyone. And the writer is laying these like Easter eggs for you to find, so that later on you can be like, oh, because they are important, and I like to call them callback opportunities. This is sort of what people on TV call it, but they're a bit like inside jokes. So the writer is laying these little pieces of information for you as you read so that the observant reader can be like, I should have known. I should have known. Because writers cannot, it's just like if you're writing like a criminal, like a murder scene, like a detective book. Okay. So if you're writing a detective series or you're reading a detective series and you have no clues as a reader as to who did it, who did the crime, then you're going to feel like this book made no sense. Authors have to intercept that and say, okay, this is going to make sense to me. This is what we're going to do. So they leave you little tiny clues that maybe you don't connect until the very end, but they are there for you. And this can be for comedic effect. It could be like a joke, you know. A lot of times in movies or TV shows, they will have like little jokes, like a joke that's made like in the first episode or like a training montage, and then at the very end they do something, and then it's funny because they're going back to that first moment. It could be for emotional pull. That is the same way. A character says, I love you in the beginning of a story, kind of joking, and then they say it for real at the end. That's going to tug at your heartstrings. Or it could be to set up other books in a series. If you've ever read the Throne of Glass series, Sarah J. Maas has done this fantastically. So she lays little tidbits of information that by the time you get to book 7, you're like, oh, that makes total sense. So that's what writers are doing. So this has been a little talk about foreshadowing, and what I want you to do is when we're reading, I want you to pay close attention to what is going on and to all of those things that I mentioned. So new characters, objects of great importance, and the others, just to really sort of understand where you could possibly go and to catch that writer out before they trick you.